You're listening to Who's Tom and Dick, a weekly podcast with your hosts, Martin Weavers, fighting stage 4 lung cancer, and Patrick Mortimer, living with heart disease. Why not grab yourself a cup of coffee, sit back, and enjoy the chatter as we discuss and share information, talking about tough subjects, and offering help, support, and motivation with a positive mental attitude.
Morning, Patrick. How are you?
Good morning, Martin. I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm not even going to mention the weather today because we mentioned the weather and it's been getting worse and worse. So I think we'd best stop there with that, don't you?
Contrast, though, from yesterday.
I know.
16-17 degrees, lovely sunshine, bright blue skies, not a cloud to be seen. And today, we've just...
Don't mention it. Don't mention it.
Entered the abyss, I was going to say.
The abyss. Where'd you get that word from?
I don't know. You know me and my words. Don't ask me to spell it.
The abyss, eh? So today, what have we got lined up?
Again, another guest.
And who is it today? Lucy?
And today we'll be speaking to Lucy Day, who runs her own business called Lucy Day Therapy.
Well, I think we'd best get her in, don't you, Pat?
Yep. So without further ado, good morning, Lucy, and welcome to Who's Tom and Dick.
Good morning, Lucy.
Good morning.
So to kick things off, perhaps you'd give us a little bit of background and tell us your story of how you got where you are today.
So it's quite a short story, but probably longer when I say it out loud. I think my journey into mental health started about 10 years ago when I was unfortunate enough to suffer an ectopic pregnancy in my 20s, which for me came very out of the blue.
You mind explaining what that is?
Sure. So it's when the pregnancy takes place in the fallopian tube. So the pregnancy can't continue, and it's also a life-threatening emergency as it's really dangerous to the mother to... If the tube was to rupture, then obviously you would internally bleed and die.
Yeah.
So I already had a child. I already had a little girl. I tried for a second baby, which had taken quite a long time, and fell pregnant, which was fantastic, and began to experience symptoms of pains and things. And I'd gone up to the hospital, who had assured me that it was absolutely fine, and if I wanted to go home, I could. But I had this hunch that something wasn't quite right. I've got a reasonable pain tolerance, and I thought, So I stayed in, and the next morning I had a scan which confirmed, yes, the pregnancy had formed in the wrong place, and also that the tube had ruptured. So I was internally bleeding at that point. So obviously, long story short, had the surgery. I had to have my fallopian tube removed and went on my way. As far as I was concerned, it was very matter of fact. I dealt with it in a way that it was me. It was just, it was an accident. It was a bad luck.
Yeah.
And got on with my life and fell pregnant again reasonably quickly with my son. And it was in those first few weeks of pregnancy that I noticed that my anxiety levels were quite high, which is normal in pregnancy, but to a point where I needed continuous reassurance from midwives and doctors and other health professionals. And that gradually got more intense as the pregnancy went on. And I was told at my 36-week scan that my son had a slight kidney issue, which was absolutely fine. But again, I noticed that this was something I couldn't stop thinking about. I was doing a lot of Googling at the time, and looking up as much information as I could find, almost disregarding what the doctor was telling me.
Right.
My son was born healthy, everything was fine. And then my anxiety went on to him. Look at this baby that I didn't think would ever be here, and now he's here. And what if things don't work out? And what if he gets poorly, or I lose him? Or what if I get poorly and I die? And it became quite irrational, but I was masking it really well because I had another child and I had a life to lead. So I continued without my life. And I think most people around me had absolutely no idea of the complete battle that I was having internally. So every pain, every sensation in my body, every change in my children, I became my own reassurance, looking for information. I went down the rabbit hole of this and that, and then I would convince myself that I was absolutely right. And I would go to the doctors, and they would, I mean, they could be quite mean actually, because I think they saw that what I was saying was really irrational. But at the same time, in my head, I felt I was being fobbed off, and I would request tests. And this went on for quite a long period of time, to the point where I started to realize that actually, when I should have been enjoying my evenings or relaxing, I was thinking, I
Yeah.
was worrying
Yeah.
continuously. So in the end, I decided to get myself some help. Many doctors at this point, when I'd gone in and kind of explained that I was worried about something, had said, do you think that perhaps you'd like some antidepressants?
Oh my God.
Something at the time
Yeah.
I was terrified to do, because actually I was scared of physiological changes. So putting a medication into my body was going to create something that I wasn't in control of. So I didn't go down that route and decided to get therapy instead, which brought me into my therapeutic journey, if you like, as I had therapy with a wonderful therapist who was from the Human Givens, and really understood how I was feeling and normalized what was going on, and then helped me to process that actually this has come from that trauma. I didn't see the ectopic as a trauma.
Yeah.
I'd almost forgotten about that. And we did a lot of work together, and it helped me to learn a lot about myself and a lot about the way that I think,
Yeah.
and to understand some of the ways that I felt, because, a lot of the time people would say to me, "Oh, you're just a hypochondriac, just a hypochondriac." And I go, yeah, I am. I was, but actually it was really deep, dark health anxiety that was quite consuming. So after I'd had therapy myself and my children were getting that tiny bit older, I felt more able to process and work with what had happened, and understand. And I was working, I've been part of a charity for about 9 years. I was a volunteer, and then I worked for the charity. And they're a fantastic charity based in Norwich, which is a substance misuse charity called the Matthew Project.
Mhm.
And my role within that charity was to support young people who were affected by their parental substance misuse.
Right.
I'd go into schools, would attend safeguarding meetings, child protection meetings, and suddenly I was very busy, which for me was actually really helpful. And I got to a point where I realized that the work we were doing at the Matthew Project was so fantastic, but it made me realize what a lack of services and what a lack of support there are for young people.
Yeah.
Because in my role there, I wasn't a therapist, I wasn't a counselor. I was just a nice lady that came in, and you did some drawing and had a chat about what's been going on, which was really helpful for people, but also didn't encourage that change to happen,
Mhm.
change that I'd experienced. So it took me onto my journey of learning to be a Human Givens therapist. So I did the Human Givens diploma, which consisted of multiple days in London and weeks away in Bristol. And I threw absolutely everything into it. And I think that actually throwing everything into that helped me on my journey to get better, if you like, and
Yeah.
to understand myself a lot better. And fast forward 10 months, I qualified early this year. It was a massive thing for me, having two children and a job. I was also volunteering, and do continue to volunteer, for Susan Weimark, who's a local funeral director.
All right.
So I run all of, alongside her and her team, she runs various bereavement groups for suicide and specialist kind of areas. And we decided together to open a children's charity, which we've just done, called the Rainbow Tree. supporting young people. And that really came off the back of the Matthew Project, having worked with a young girl whose mum passed away. It made me realise, again, what a lack of services we have. You know, Martin will understand this, where we are, you know, you can't get anything here. You can't get any support. You can't even get McDonald's. You know, you really are isolated here. And
You might get one in this.
I'm holding out for that, Martin. And I think it's everything that's come together that's helped me to realise that actually there's a reasonable amount in cities. I'm not saying that they've got it covered, because absolutely we know from what's going on in the world they don't have it covered. But here, especially, if you want to see a mental health professional, it's difficult.
Yeah.
Where do you go? What do you do? You know, our GP surgeries are completely overrun. We are very rural. We don't have a huge amount of public transport, and it's tough. So I think when I qualified, something I wanted to try and do was make practice really accessible to people. I wanted to price myself in a market where it was still accessible for parents to get the support they needed for their children, and for adults to move on and enjoy their lives again.
Primarily, what do you specialise in? What sort of clients come to you for support?
So it's a real mix.
Yeah.
I can work with everything, because everything comes from something. So I see a lot of clients with anxiety and depression, intrusive thoughts, PTSD, phobias, bereavement, everything that can go on in a person's life that can absolutely knock you for six.
Yeah.
To see a therapist around this way was, once I got my cancer diagnosed, my wife wanted to go to a therapist, and she found that very hard. But it was good old Macmillan in the end that came to her rescue, because we're in the sticks, aren't we?
We are. We really are.
What techniques do you use in your therapy?
So the Human Givens organising idea, if you like, is that we are all programmed with a set of innate physical and emotional needs.
Yeah.
And when those emotional needs aren't met in balance or in a healthy way, that's when we are more susceptible and less resilient to the outside world, more likely to become mentally unwell or mentally distressed and feel unable to cope.
Mm-hmm.
So what we do is we look at that set of needs and how they're being met. So, for example, if somebody is misusing alcohol, for example, it could be linked to one of their emotional needs that they're not meeting elsewhere. So they're filling that void with something else.
Yeah.
So by working with these needs and working with what people have in their lives, your resources, your life resources, your family, your friends, your hobbies, your achievements, the things that take you out of that dark place at times, and really homing in on those and putting those at the forefront.
When you were suffering from your anxiety, did you tell anyone in the family what you're going through, or was it just the professionals?
I mean, my husband knew, and I would say maybe one or two close friends, but I barely told anybody. And I would think even to this day, there's still a lot of people that would be maybe quite shocked to think that, because
They
I think
might find out now.
Yeah. Sorry, everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's only going to go over the world, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I kept it to myself, and I look back and I asked myself, why? Why did I keep that to myself? I was actually really embarrassed.
Yeah.
And I felt really stupid, because a lot of the things that I was thinking that felt very real to me were very irrational.
Yeah. So who would say you were a hypochondriac then? You said people would say you was a hypochondriac. Who would, surely not your family.
Yeah. You know, anyone would say, oh, goodness sake, you know, come on, Lucy, pull yourself together. You know, don't be ridiculous. You're very young, you know, that, you know, you can't have that, or that won't happen. And I think that when people would shut me down, and medical professionals as well, you know, doctors would go, oh. You know, like, and I used to almost get this sense of dread when I would call the doctors. And actually that stuck with me. But when I would call the doctors, I would think, oh my gosh, my name's going to flash up and they're going to go, now what's wrong with her? Now what does she think she's got? And that for me was really real, and it created so much more anxiety than needed to be there. But I did see a really lovely doctor, and I remember her saying to me, I really get it. You know, I've got children, I understand. And I remember just crying for ages, like this release of emotion, because I felt heard. Whereas this was just going on constantly in my head, and I was constantly ruminating. And that's a really dark, isolating place to be for people. And I see that with my clients, that when you are constantly in that thought process of, and you're in fight or flight, you're getting those physiological changes all the time that signal into you more, you know, well, I feel sick today and I've got a headache, so there must be something terrible going on. Whereas actually probably really anxious and stressed, and all the chemicals and all the hormones are flying around your body left, right and center.
Yeah.
And that will continue until that goes.
Yeah. Yeah. We always say to people on here, don't Google your illness. Seek professional advice. Now, did you find Google helped or increased your anxiety?
It completely increased my anxiety.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had mentally in my mind, you know, I've sat there and planned my own funeral after being on Google. I've pretty much decided what I'm going to say to everybody to say goodbye. I'm awaiting a blood test, convinced that, you know, it's all over, you know. And when I look back at that and I think of the time that I wasted, the time where I could have been present and enjoying my life, because as we all know, life's not guaranteed. You know, all that we have really is the present right now. And if I'd have lived more presently instead of constantly, I mean, even got to the point where I would book a holiday and I would almost think, well, I won't be going on that because something terrible will happen between now and then.
Yeah.
So my life was very much on hold.
Did you find you had a lot of time on your hands when you were experiencing this anxiety?
Yeah.
You had a lot of time on your hands.
I got too much. Yeah, I had too much time. And I think that was something that I realized, that actually it was that inability to relax. And actually, you know, I mean, looking back, I didn't have that much time. I had 2 small children and I was working, but I found time. I found time to go down that rabbit hole because it was a safety behavior. It was a comfort to me. I felt that by being in the know and having that control, that I knew better than the doctors.
Yeah. But then having children, there's an anxiety anyway. I was talking to my wife last night. I forget what it was. Oh, it was an advert came on TV, and I said, that child looks far too old to be kissed goodnight by his mum. And I thought, well, I used to do that to my children when they were fast asleep, just to make sure they were breathing. That was my anxiety with them.
I've spent many an hour hovering over a cot, you know, and, you know, hand on the chest, you're breathing. You know, times I've woken up a sleeping baby accidentally because of my own anxiety. So
yeah, I'm sure we're not alone there. So when you did your college, did you learn about yourself going along the way as well?
One of the things that we did during our training was to be so we would practice on each other live in the room to sort of, and the tutors would say, pick a low level issue here that you can bring to the table to make some change with, to help your colleague to show their skills. And I actually picked this low level. And even though I thought it was all behind me, working with that trainee therapist and being in that room and hearing the feedback, it blew my mind, because when I say it out loud, even now when I say it out loud to you, I don't believe that was me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I can rationalize a lot better. I
Yeah.
think that's the difference. I can get a headache and I can say, probably haven't drank a lot of water today, or perhaps I'm a little bit tired, or, you know, I can find the reason for it. I think that was what I was trying to do. I was always trying to find a reason for something. And actually, sometimes there's not a reason. And that's
I'm thinking
okay.
it was an illness.
Yeah.
And
so definitely have learned a huge amount about the way I think and slowing that thought process down.
Yeah. I think the biggest problem with these sort of things is they start from something like having a child or having an illness where you have to recover. I know when I come out of hospital the first time from my heart attack, I had a lot of time on my hands doing nothing. When you've got loads of time on your hands and nothing to do, that's when these sort of things can creep in and take over.
And you develop that hypervigilance almost, where, if I said to you right now, I want you all to focus on your left foot, notice everything that you feel about your left foot, you would automatically feel things in that foot.
I'm sorry, I've got to laugh there. You said focus. I've got a boot on at the moment because I've torn my Achilles. That's my...
I feel loads then.
Yeah, sorry, I had to tell you that.
Could have picked the right one, couldn't I? I think when you focus on absolutely anything, you notice more.
Yeah.
And that can be an absolute curse. But if you're focusing on something else, it can be a blessing.
Yeah.
So whatever you're focusing your attention on is more likely to win in your brain.
Yeah, definitely. And this brings us to the example that I always use. When you have when men have man flu, we're dying.
Yeah, I know.
But if we get up in the morning and we're suffering, and we think, oh God, I can't go to work, I don't feel very well, but I'll go. But when you get there and you're concentrating on your job, that all disappears.
Yeah.
It doesn't come back again until you get home and you're relaxing in front of the TV and you start to feel ill again. So it is mind over matter. So it's just interesting how powerful the mind is. When you had this anxiety, did it make you physically ill?
Yeah, I think majority of the symptoms that I was getting was from the anxiety, not from anything else.
Yeah.
What we do know is that anxiety is inbuilt to all of us. It is an innate resource and we need it because it's helpful to keep us safe in dangerous situations. What happens with anxiety is it becomes misused. So when you're starting to become anxious just at home sat on the sofa, or you're anxious walking around the supermarket, you're producing the same physiological symptoms that you would if a bear jumped out. So it's that same change in the respiratory system. It's the same with the body, with the hands, with the ready to fight, ready to fly, ready to freeze. All those things are going on in the brain. The pupils are dilating and everything is gearing us up to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
So when that's happening, when you're just sat on the sofa or you've just walked into Tesco's, you're still experiencing that same rush. So you've still got to get rid of that feeling and those chemicals and the changes that are going on in your body at that moment.
Yeah.
Going on to that, in the 70s, you won't remember the 70s, but I do. Martin will remember the 70s.
I don't.
But we don't believe the word anxiety or stress existed, really. It was always oh, you're all right, get on with it, pull yourself together. And anxiety and stress are fairly modern words used today, just to emphasize the strength of the brain and how it can affect your body. We've all experienced listening to a piece of music coming on the radio all of a sudden that's sending shivers all the way through your body. Now, that's how the brain can react to that. So it can react in many different ways to experiences you go throughout the day. So I totally get where you're coming from.
Music is a really interesting thing, actually, because it's the fastest way to change your emotional state. So we all know that if there's a sad song, it makes us feel a bit sad. But if there's a happy song, we can kind of big ourselves up and get back to what we're doing. So you would never run to sad music because you'd end up probably stopping and having a little cry. So
yeah. Well, the prime example, the tricks that the gym use, obviously exercise are good for you, but they also normally play music, and that's normally upbeat music. And also some gyms use mirrors which are slightly tinted brown, so that it makes your complexion look much better. So you feel good about yourself when you look into them.
Never knew
I can't say I've ever found that in a gym myself. I can't say I've ever looked in the mirror and thought, whoa.
Pat looks in the mirror all the time.
Yeah, we'll find it more in a changing room in a shop. They'll use tinted mirrors.
Yeah.
So you say, oh, I look good in this. Until you get home. Sorry, I don't normally say that sort of thing.
When you try and undress as Pat.
It's a trick they play, and it's just convincing the brain to behave differently and make you want to go ahead and purchase it. So anyway, we're Martin.
Okay, thank you. So obviously you work with a funeral director, you said. Do all the hospitals know about the service that you could provide? Are they aware of it?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I mean, I would like to think that hospitals are aware of the Human Givens because they're a massive, massive organisation now and a part of the Scope Head framework, which is a registered body for therapy. But I think the truth of it is, I don't think there's any money. So I think that the hospitals and the doctors and the GP surgeries are trying to manage it with workshops through the wellbeing that you go on a waiting list, you get your 6 sessions and you recover and you leave. And a lot of people that come to see me are on those waiting lists or have tried that therapy and it's not necessarily worked for them because it is such a personal thing as well.
Yeah.
I was reading on your website something about a rewind method. What is that?
Okay, yes. So the rewind method is something that in Human Givens we use. It's a tool, one of many, and I would think we're probably best known for that. Whenever you speak to anyone, that tends to come up. The rewind therapy is essentially taking a memory, so a traumatic experience, a phobia, and guiding that person into a state of deep relaxation. So using a body scan and various techniques to make that person feel really entranced and really comfortable, and then processing that memory through me guiding them backwards and forwards through that. When I first heard about the rewind technique during my training, I was like, that's really strange because to explain it to someone, it's really bizarre, but it's so effective. And it really does work on that brain backwards and forwards. And it's not going to take away the memory. The memory is still very much there, but it's going to diffuse the emotion around that memory.
You're getting into the subject that I studied, hypnosis.
Yes. So it's very similar along those lines, Patrick, with the respect of, people, as we know, people are susceptible to change when they're in a state of relaxation. You can't outthink anxiety. When you're in a state of anxiety, you can't think clearly. You can't see the trees for the wood. It's all gone. If you can get someone into a really calm state, you're more likely to be able to make those changes.
A lot of phobias start from a bad experience as a child.
Yeah.
And I always use the example of a spider. Because what happens is a child may be happily playing on the floor and the spider walks across the floor and the mother jumps and screams and says, get rid of this spider. And the spider's then cut out and the child has experienced this and taken this in and that's cemented in the subconscious mind and they gradually become afraid of spiders and that's how their phobias begin.
Yeah.
It's normally something that's happened in an earlier part of their lives that hasn't had an effect on them immediately, but it has registered in the brain. And they draw on that when they see that spider the next time.
That negative association
exactly.
with spider, fear.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting you say that about being the mum that's reacted to that spider, because one thing that I always try and understand with people when they're having certain thoughts is this your thought?
Yeah.
Has this come from elsewhere? Because that can be really interesting to separate someone from the thoughts they're having, because sometimes we can almost take on what other people are saying as gospel and as the norm. And actually, when someone says, well, this is what I think about myself, is that your thought or is that someone else's thought?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it starts when you start educating your children. I mean, we tell our children grass is green, they accept it. I mean, we've only labelled grass as being green throughout time. If you told that child grass is yellow throughout its entire life, it would believe the grass is yellow. So
yeah,
it's how your mind works. When you're working with children, how do you adapt the human given approach to make it engaging with them?
So children have the same brains as us, and Human Givens, I guess when you see therapy on the TV now, because there's a therapist in every film and television program now, there's a lot of sitting around and laying on a couch and talking about your feelings and how does that make you feel. Human Givens is a lot more solution focused. It's a lot more about using those resources, meeting those unmet needs. So with a child, something that's really, really helpful is imagination.
Yep.
So we use a lot of imaginative work. If you can imagine yourself doing something, you're more likely to do it. if you think about it, anxiety is that misuse of the imagination. We are imagining something bad to happen. So if you can imagine something bad, you can imagine something good.
What did you do before you did this then? Because you haven't done this all your life, have you?
No, I haven't. So my very early days, I started out working in a dental practice, and then I worked in an office, and then I worked as a waitress while my children were really young, and I worked in a couple of local restaurants, which I thoroughly enjoyed because
Yeah.
I love people. And I think to be in this kind of profession, you have to like people. You
Yeah.
have
Yes.
to enjoy people. So I met
Yeah.
some fantastic people and learned a lot about other areas of the world. And I think when I had my children, it was really important to me, probably not a great idea looking back, to be around more.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to be a mum and I wanted them to have that consistent person. You know, my husband runs his own company, so he's very busy all the time. And we didn't have a huge amount of childcare. My parents were still quite young. And Matt's parents weren't able to help us. So I kind of had that decision sort of taken on of, you know, I will do this. And I think looking back that actually in that time, all it really did was make me feel a little bit like, who am I? And one of the emotional needs is meaning and purpose.
Yeah.
And although I had a massive meaning, I was a mum and I was, you know, looking after my children and my home. I think I knew that there was a bit more that I could be doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you
Ah.
don't sit them on a couch for 30 minutes a week and say, right, now tell me your problems.
Yeah.
Let's work through your problems at school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How can people contact you? I know we go all over the world, but there might be some people locally listening.
So I actually offer my therapy online as well, because I think it's
Okay.
really important for people, especially if somebody's struggling to get out of the house.
Yeah.
You know, that's something that happens that when people are in a state of anxiety and depression, they just don't want to go out. So I offer my therapy online and I have my own practice at my home as well. So they can contact me on my website, which is lucydaytherapy.co.uk. All my details are on there and how to get in touch. I think what I'd just like to add is that when you're feeling anxious or depressed or scared or lonely, there is hope and
Mm.
that everything in life is temporary. The highs are temporary and the lows are temporary.
Yeah.
And not even the biggest storm lasts forever. So to just understand that when the world feels like it's closed in and there's absolutely nowhere to go, there is.
Yeah. And what is the address of your website?
It's lucydaytherapy.co.uk.
Excellent. Well, thanks very much, Lucy, for joining
Thank
us this
you.
morning.
Thank you.
That's been absolutely marvellous.
Yeah, I think it probably, you know, I think for me it's funny because people say to me, "Oh, Lucy, you can't save the world," and I'm like, I can't, but I'll have a good go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's so many people out there that don't seek help and just battle on. And
Yeah.
of course, you know, without the help, it never goes away, does it?
No.
If one person walks out of my therapy room and feels lighter and brighter, and it makes a difference, then I feel I've done something in my life that's changed someone else.
And we always say that about our podcast, that if people listen and just one person goes away and thinks, wow, I'm not the only person in the world with that.
Yeah.
You know, it's very interesting, Lucy. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for
you
joining
both
us.
so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Both
Thank you.
take care.
And you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Lucy.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
What a lovely lady, Patrick.
Very interesting, Martin. And I can relate to a lot to what she was saying.
I
Having
thought you
studied
might.
hypnosis. Yeah. So if anybody's feeling anxious or depressed or just need a bit of therapy, then tap into Lucy's website, which is www.lucydaytherapies.co.uk.
And it's so good that she can do it online. So wherever you are in the world and you think you need some help, then, you know, don't suffer in silence. That's our message, isn't it, Pat?
Yeah. I think you ought to spend a half an hour with her a week because you're a miserable old git at times.
I'm always happy.
I know.
Always happy.
I'm pulling your good leg.
I know you are. Well, that's the end of another podcast, Patrick.
It is. I'm going to stay indoors today, mate.
So, yeah, do you know what? I think I might too.
Well, have a great weekend, everybody.
Yeah, have a good one.
Stay safe.
We'll see you next week.
See you next week. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Who's Tom and Dick podcast with your hosts, Martin Weavers and Patrick Mortimer. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the show on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite streaming platform. New episodes are available every Friday. Thanks for tuning in.